In this episode of the Global Travel Channel podcast show, we are going to be talking about one of the most amazing places to visit in France. Now, find out next where that place is. Hello and welcome to the Global Travel Channel podcast show. My name is Mark Philpott. On the show, we talk to people from across the world about all things related to travel. From amazing adventures to inspiring stories to the not so well-known destinations, we cover it all. You can find all of our previous podcast episodes on our Global Travel Channel website by visiting www.globaltravelchannel.com. If you prefer to get your podcast from Apple Podcast, Stitcher or Spotify, you can also find the Global Travel Channel podcast show there as well. The Global Travel Channel is a collaboration between travel writers, photographers, YouTubers, podcasters and bloggers from across the world. We bring you information that we hope makes your next travel experience an awesome one, no matter where you decide to travel to. You can also find the Global Travel Channel on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube, so be sure to subscribe, like and follow us so that you can keep up to date on our new content postings as and when they happen. We have also now launched our Patreon page, so for as little as the price of a cup of coffee per month, you can help us continue to produce the podcast show by contributing in a small way. We would appreciate that. Now on to today's show, and I'm going to be doing something a little bit different today. I have a different style of guest coming on the show, and we're going to talk about one of my favourite places in the whole wide world, and it's a small town in the southeast of France called Annecy. So let's get on and meet my guest for today's show. Now it's a very warm welcome to the Global Travel Channel podcast show to Mr. Mark Philpott. Mark, welcome to the show. Hey man, thanks very much for having me. This is a whole new experience. I've never been a guest on a podcast show before, so this is fantastic. Thanks for having me. No problem, you're welcome. Now, we're going to be talking to you today about a place in France called Annecy, and it's a place I hear that you love a lot. Yeah, I sure do. So tell us, how did you come across the place and where is it exactly? Well, Annecy is a pretty small town in the southeast of France. It's about a 35-minute drive from Geneva in Switzerland. If you head over the Swiss-French border, for about 35 minutes driving, you'll come to Annecy. And why don't you share with the audience today how you came across this place called Annecy? Yeah, sure, I will. Well, at the time I was living in Europe and I was based in Brussels in Belgium for my job. And every so often I would get in my car on a Friday afternoon and head off somewhere in Europe to explore a new place. And it was on a particular long weekend that I decided to go a little bit further than what I had been going. So I got in my car and I headed south out of Belgium and into France. And I kept on driving, and I can't tell you what made me go to this specific place. It was just a matter of I was in my car, I was driving for hours literally. And it was really because I became a little bit tired and I wanted to have a rest, and it was getting fairly late in the evening. And this was on a Friday night, and I thought I would turn off the highway and try and find somewhere to stay, basically. So you were deep in the heart of France when you got off the highway and started to look for somewhere to stay. Is that right? Yeah, I'd been driving for about 8 or 9 hours, and I got off the highway, and I really didn't know where I was. I wasn't in an area of France that I knew at all, and I just decided to live in the now and go with where I was and see what I came across. So I finally arrived in this small township of Annecy, and it was very late. It must have been after 11:30 at night, and it was cold, it was wet and snowing even, and I started looking for a hotel to stay at, and basically there was nothing available. Everything that I went to had a no vacancy sign up. So I was actually planning on leaving and going to the next town that I could find, which was going to be Albertville. And I was driving around the lake of Annecy, heading out of town. And as I was driving along that road, I found a very small hotel that was like a boutique style hotel, and it had a vacancy sign up. So I decided to go into there. Wow, that was pretty lucky. So did you actually end up staying at that particular place? Yeah, I did. I actually went up to the front door, and despite the hour of the night, I pressed the bell, and a gentleman came down to greet me, and I explained my situation, and he said to me that he had a room available. So within about 5 minutes, I was inside in the room having a shower and getting ready to go to bed. I was really tired. It was miserable outside, so there wasn't much else to see or do for that particular day. So I just decided to go to bed and have a good night's sleep and get up in the morning and see what this place was like that I had arrived in. So I got up in the morning, and first of all, I was really surprised with the hotel I was staying at, and it was just such a really gorgeous, quaint little place. It was a 3-star hotel, but it was really like an old B&B kind of place that you'd find in the English countryside. It certainly wouldn't have been out of place there. So I was really happy with my chance arrival at this particular place. Anyway, the first thing that greeted me when I woke up in the morning was this stunning view out of my window overlooking this amazing lake. And the sunshine had come out. It was a beautiful blue sunny day, and I thought, wow, this looks pretty nice. I'm going to get out and explore. So first of all, I went downstairs and had the breakfast in this hotel, and it was a great buffet breakfast, lots of croissants and fresh fruits and some yogurts and mueslis and good healthy things to get your day started. What was the name of this hotel you stayed at, Mark? This place was called the Hotel Marquee Set. So it was just, as I say, just leaving Annecy on the road to Albertville, literally 400 or 500 meters out of town. So you didn't have to actually drive very far. Anyway, I got up in the morning and I went downstairs, and as I said, and I had breakfast, and the owner who let me in the previous night came over to introduce himself, and his name was Elaine. And him and I got chatting, and he asked me where I'd come from and why I was in Annecy. And I told him that I literally fell across this place, and he explained to me that, oh, you look like a fairly fit guy. There's lots of things to do here in the outdoors. You can swim in the lake, you can go mountain bike riding, there's some good cycling roads, etc., etc. So he gave me a few tips on places to go and check out during the day. So I left the hotel fairly early, and I got in my car and I started driving around the lake. And when you arrive in Annecy, I think the first, particularly if you arrive in the daytime and you can actually see the lake, but I was just blown away by the beauty of this place. It was just absolutely amazing. And the reason it's so amazing is that this lake is really put right at the foothills of the Alps, and you have magnificent mountains around the side of the lake, which are almost cascading into the lake, yet you are able to drive around the entire perimeter of the lake. In fact, it's about a 38-kilometer drive around the entire lake. Oh, that sounds really beautiful. So what did you get up to during the day there, your first day there? Well, as I say, I got out and explored. So I got in my car and I started driving around the lake anti-clockwise. And I did that because then I was going to be able to see the lake as I was driving, and it was going to be a lot more pleasurable. So I headed off from the hotel and I headed in the direction of Albertville, the direction I was going the previous evening, and I started seeing all kinds of amazing vistas as I went. So just about around every corner, you get this incredible view of the mountains and of the lake. And being such a perfect day, the day that I was driving around the lake, it was just really astronomical. I couldn't help but stop every 100 meters or so and take photos and breathe in the beautiful fresh mountain air. And for me, there was some kind of connection to this place right from the beginning. Like, I arrived in this place fortuitously, and I had no idea really why I was here, but I was quickly starting to feel a sense of something different. Like, I'd been to so many places around the world, and yet when I arrived in Annecy in this very first morning that I got out to explore, it was just a really amazing connection that I had to this particular place. So what do you put that down to? Do you think it was the nature and the mountains and the lake and everything that's around there? Yeah, I do actually. I think a lot of it had to do with the beautiful surroundings, the beautiful day. It was very cold, but it was very, very embracing in terms of freshness and mountaineer, and I just felt absolutely alive. I'd had a good night's sleep. I'd got up and had a very healthy breakfast at the hotel. So yeah, I was in a really good place. And I think all those things are kind of fundamentally important when you arrive at a new destination, and how quickly you kind of adapt and adapt to being in those surroundings. Anyway, I carried on and I kept driving around the lake, and one of the many beautiful things about Annecy is that you can go off the main road that goes around the lake, and you can find all these wonderful little villages and places to stop and have a look at the scenery, and it's just really mind-blowing. And Elaine had told me at the hotel about the amazing opportunity to go riding your bike, and at this stage of my life I was really into triathlon, so I was doing a lot of cycling, and I thought, oh wow, this would be an amazing place to bring my bike. So you didn't have your bike with you on this trip? No, I didn't, unfortunately. It was back in Brussels, but it immediately gave me a sense of, oh, I must come down here with my bike and I must do some riding. I was already, I don't know, getting in line for setting up a future trip. Anyway, I carried on around the lake, and when you get to the southern end of the lake, you come to a place called Dussard, and it's a lovely little village that has a couple of restaurants, and it's right on the waterfront, and there's a lovely chateau there that's also a restaurant. And you look right back up the lake towards Annecy, the city, and the lake's actually 15 kilometers long, and as I said before, it's 38 kilometers around. And on this particular morning, it was just like the surface of the lake was like glass. It was just absolutely amazing. And I pulled the car over into a car park, and I just sat there by the water's edge with my feet in the water, looking at this amazing view around me. With, on my right side, I had mountains going up to 2,500 meters. On the left-hand side, smaller mountains, but again, they were beautifully covered in snow, and it was just a really gorgeous setting. And it reminded me a lot of New Zealand, actually. At that stage, I sat there and I kind of had envisaged of being in the South Island in New Zealand and enjoying some of the views that they have there. I bet the food was very different than in New Zealand, though. Yeah, it was, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but I found the food to be really amazing, actually, in Annecy and the surrounding area. Anyway, I sat there for a while, and then I got back in my car and I kept driving, and as I was going around the eastern side of the lake, it was a lot more mountainous and a bit more hilly, and I saw a road going off the side that went up to top of one of the hills that was nearby, so I decided to go up there. And this is when I had my first opportunity to look down on the Lake of Annecy, and once again, it was just a breathtaking view from up above high and looking down, and there was a lovely little cafe there on top of a mountain called the Col de Vauclaz, which I would get to know very personally over the next number of years. So I never knew it at the time, my first time there, and I sat on the terrace outside and I had a drink and I watched the amazing view. And there were some guys and girls who were doing some parapenting. They were jumping off just in front of the cafe, literally off the side of the mountain, and just floating over the lake. And it was just magnificent. And I kept on having this deeper, meaningful connection to this place. And again, as I say, I traveled a lot of places around the world, and this was one of the first times that I felt so connected to an actual destination that I had arrived to. So what did you do after you'd been to the cafe? Well, I carried on driving around the side of the lake, and it takes you up and down a few hills and back into some villages that are back by the lake shore again. And I found some really great little places down by the lake where you can hire out little boats, you can go in little dinghy sailing on the lake. There's lots of little beaches where you can go swimming, and little parks that are by the lake as well. So it's really great to take a picnic and go down with friends and the family by the lake, which I enjoyed many, many times in the future. And it was just really incredible to be able to be in such a pristine part of the world. So I went back to the hotel and I was sitting down talking to Elaine, the curator of the hotel, and he was telling me lots of different stories about history, and in particular how his family had left Paris. He was working in Paris, and they decided to have a change of life, and his wife and himself came to Annecy, and they brought this small boutique hotel and started a new life in Annecy. And he was telling me how much happier they were being in nature and how he'd got connected to all the outdoors lifestyle. And he played golf at the local golf club in the summertime, and they go skiing with the kids and everything in the winter, and it was just a really perfect lifestyle. So unfortunately, I only had the weekend there, so I got out and about and I tried some of the local food. I went to there's a really big market every Sunday morning, and I went to the market before I left to drive back to Brussels, and really enjoyed that because there was lots of fresh fruit and produce from the nearby area, and it was just absolutely fantastic. So I thought, wow, I've got to come back to this place. I really have to explore it more. I want to take some more time here. It's in such a beautiful part of the world. I hadn't seen a lot of that area before, so I made a commitment to myself to come back. So then, did you drive back to Brussels again? Yes, I did, and it was my first time driving back to Brussels from Annecy, and it was another 9-hour trip, which was, by the time I got home, I was equally as tired as I was when I went down there. But I'd had such a great time and a great connection to this place that I was already planning, gosh, when's the next long weekend? When can I go down there and take my bike? And it's going to be warmer soon and the weather's going to be better for training and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, I was already hooked on going to Annecy again. So from your first visit, what would you say were some of the highlights from your introduction to Annecy? Well, I was just really blown away by that area because I had never considered the southeast of France as a place to find these kinds of places. You know, people are typically, running down to the Côte d'Azur and having holiday experiences around that area, whereas the southeast part of France, where it's nestled into the Italian border and the Swiss border, it's really a spectacular part of the world. And of course, you've got the Grand Massif as well in terms of the Alps. So it really has a bit of everything for everybody. And I think that first weekend installed in me is that this is a place where I could have a lot of fun. It was a place where, for an outdoorsy type person like I am, that it was just a really, really good place to go and connect with. So how long was it before you were back in Annecy again? Well, it wasn't too long at all, really. It was just a matter of weeks. I think it was 3 weeks later that I was back in the car again. This time I threw in all my outdoor gear. I had the bike in there. I had my golf clubs in there. And away I went off to Annecy again. And the 9-hour drive wasn't that pleasurable because it's not a fantastic drive through France in the way down there. You go down through Metz and then Lyon and then Grenoble and then into Annecy. It's not the most exciting part of the world to drive through, but knowing what's at the other end, I really couldn't wait to get there. And I had all these plans to do a great lot of activity for the next 3 or 4 days that I was going to spend down there. So what was the plan? Were you going to go back to the same hotel again and stay with Elaine and his family? Yeah, absolutely. I'd contacted Elaine again and said, hey, listen, I want to come back. And he said, right, we'll give you the same room. And it was funny because it really started a trend where I used to go to Annecy all the time, and I used to have the same room in the same hotel, and Elaine and Sylvie would meet me and greet me, and they welcomed me into their family, and it was just absolutely fantastic. They had 2 young girls, and I literally spent years watching them grow up. They're both in their early 20s now. And their little dog, Twinny, who was always around and always remembered me. So that was great going back to visit them. And, we had a great, and we still have to this day, we have a great friendship, and they still welcome me into their home. And I've even had Christmas with their family and things like that. So, yeah, it's fantastic. I love that about traveling, when you can go somewhere and you connect with local people and you have a relationship in a sense of, a friendship and a connection to that area, but also to the people in that area. And that's what makes Annecy so special for me, because I've developed that over, 20 odd years now, and it's been a special relationship. So what did you do the next time that you went back to Annecy? Well, as I said, I had all my sports gear. So the first thing I wanted to do was, I had always had this vision since I lived in Europe of being able to ride the great climbs of the Tour de France. That was something that I was always very, very passionate about doing at some stage in my life. And as I said earlier, I had been training for triathlons and doing Ironman triathlons at the stage, so I was pretty fit, and I thought, wow, this is a really good opportunity to test how fit I was. So when I arrived back in Annecy again, and I sat down with Elaine and I said, hey, Elaine, tell me about some of the places that I can go riding my bike, and he said, well, right behind us, right behind the hotel here, if you look out the back window, you can see a mountain, and that mountain is called Mount Simoes. And Mount Simoes became a friend and a foe to me because it was a place where I used to spend a lot of my time. And I remember the very first time that I left the hotel to go riding up Mount Simoes, and I had no idea how difficult it was going to be. I had no idea what the conditions were. I'd never climbed a mountain on my bicycle before, particularly in the French Alps. So this was a whole new experience. But I left the hotel and I had lots of gear on because it was still quite cold, and I had lots of water and food, and I thought, okay, well, I'm going to give this a good go and see how I go. So the first part was okay. It was like fairly relaxing, and I got up to around 900 meters, 1,000 meters above sea level, and I was going okay. I was just pacing myself. Then I turned off the road where it actually starts the real climb of the Simoes, and I started climbing up there. And oh goodness gracious, my legs nearly blew apart. Now you said you're going to Annecy to have fun and have a holiday. How was this any kind of a holiday? Yeah, that's a really good question, but I really enjoy doing these things. I think getting to see a place by bicycle is a great thing to do where you travel anywhere. I think it's a great way to get around a place. Riding up a mountain, that's something that really gets you fit and healthy, and it tests you out a bit, and I love that sort of stuff. So yeah, I got up to the top of Simoes the first time, and I was huffing and puffing, and I almost had to stop a couple of times. I'll be honest about that, but I didn't, and I kept going. And when I got to the top, it was just amazing. The view was just spectacular. In fact, I could see all the way across to Mont Blanc, which was to the southern end of the lake, and it was just really spectacular. And I just had an amazing sense of achievement when I got to the top of this mountain. I was sitting there on my bicycle by myself in the middle of nowhere. It was quite cold and chilly. I felt the wind chill factor quite a bit, but I just had this magnificent view of the Lake of Annecy below me. People, little dots in the distance, and animals around on the fields. There was cows and sheep and things, and it was just an extraordinary experience. So yeah, I was really happy, and I went back down, and then I started doing a tour of the lake on my bicycle. And the great thing about Annecy is that you can almost go around the entire lake circumference on a bicycle track. So the local council and stuff have done an amazing job for tourists to make this place really outdoor sportsy friendly. There's lots of different activities during the year. I ran the marathon there one year, the Annecy Marathon, which is a great race around the lake. Spectacular course, a little bit tough with some of the hills, but it's a great race, and the local people really get into it and support it. So, from cross-country skiing to normal skiing to kayaking, rowing, dinghy sailing, swimming on the lake, there's so many things that you can do in this place. And the great thing about it is because it's a lake, you've got the summer and the winter options. So if you love skiing, you can go there during the ski season. And then in the summertime, you've got all the activities associated with being on the lake, and the hiking is amazing as well during the summertime up in the mountains and that. So it really is spectacular. So what did you do differently on your second visit than you'd done on your previous visit? Well, I had a couple of extra days there this time, so I got to see the general area a bit more. So I went out a bit further than I had before. I talked about the first time I went there, I went up the Col de Forclaz. Well, now I had my bicycle and I climbed up there on my bike. Another tough climb. It summits out at about 1,200 meters, but it's a tough little test, and it's a great ride up there. And it's on the opposite side of the lake to the Mount Simoes, so you get to see a different perspective. And again, when you get to the top, there's a lovely cafe there, so you can sit up with your bike and rest and watch the parapenters and parachuters jumping off the side of the mountain. So it's a really cool place. I used to love going up there. And then riding down the other side through Montmin, which is a small little farmer's village on the other side. And it's a very steep descent down on the other side of the Col de Forclaz, and it brings you out on the main highway that runs between Annecy and Albertville. And then you can basically, again, get onto the cycle track and ride your way back into Annecy. And I used to love doing that circuit. It was a great training ride, and it was just a beautiful way of getting out into the mountains and enjoying that. So you talk a lot about the mountains. Did you spend any time in the mountains during your time in Annecy? Yeah, I did. I used to do a lot of hiking there, and I actually climbed a couple of the mountains as well. The highest mountain on the side of the lake is called La Tournée, which is about 2,380 meters high, I think it is, somewhere near that. I'm sure somebody will correct me, but it's close to 2,400 meters high. And there's a great track that takes you right up to the summit, and the view from the top of Tournai is just incredible. I've got amazing photos of looking across the Mont Blanc, and it's almost at a distance where you can reach out and touch it. It's fantastic, and you've got all the rest of the French Alps. So you're high enough up to get an incredible vista of the French Alps, and then down below you've got the Lake of Annecy below you, and the northern part of the lake, and moving out to the more fertile and flatter lands on the northern part of Annecy. But yeah, up all around there's a lot of great hiking trails. So if you're into outdoor hiking, it's well provisioned for. There's plenty of huts and camping grounds for people to go and do, whether it be day trips or weekend trips or even longer. You can go and walk as far as you want to. Basically, it's unlimited, and there's some really, really good trails. So yeah, I spent a lot of time in the mountain. I mentioned before that I went down and spent Christmas with Elaine and Sylvie for Christmas one year, and we went skiing on Christmas Day, which was a real fantastic thing to do. We went to Grand Bonnard, which is not too far from Annecy, a great ski field. It's not one of the most well-known ski fields in France, especially when you've got Chamonix just up the road. But it's a great place to go because not many people go there, and it's not as crowded as some of the other places. And we went on Christmas Day and there was no one there, so we had the whole slopes to ourselves, which was just really, really incredible. So yeah, skiing in the area is really good. It's close to all the big ski fields as well if you want to go up into the higher Alps, but it's a great place to go in the winter time to do those sorts of things. Obviously, the lake is decommissioned during the winter time, so I wouldn't recommend you spending too much time on there in the winter time. So you were going to tell us about the food and the food experiences in Annecy. How was all that? Yeah, well, the food is fantastic, and as I mentioned earlier, I think that Annecy in general reminds me a lot of the southern island of New Zealand and around the Queenstown area. It's very picturesque, very beautiful, and the food was another thing that was very similar to New Zealand in terms of, particularly in the wintertime, one of their most favourite dishes is the raclette, which is a cow's milk cheese melted in front of an open fire with potatoes and dried meats and pickled onions and gherkins, and a really hearty, warming, soulful food and meal. And I used to love eating the raclette in the wintertime. It really warmed up your soul from inside. And then again, as I said, I went to the markets on a regular basis when I was in Annecy, and you could pick up all kinds of local produce. The area was renowned for its cheeses, all kinds of different cheeses. The markets themselves are an incredible experience where it's colourful, it's bright. You've got a lot of characters going along selling their wares, and it's just a great place to go in the winter weekend. Was what I was trying to say. To go on the weekend, and also during the week they have markets. I think Tuesday through Thursday as well. They have another group of markets, a different type of group of markets. So would you say it's a good place for people to really get to know French cuisine, going to a place like Annecy? Yeah, absolutely. I think in terms of it has everything that you'll find everywhere else in France, and from your poulets to all your other meats. There's a variety of seafood there as well. A lot of seafood stores, and a good selection of wines from the local area. So if you're not tapping into the mainstream French wine culture, then the area around Annecy, the Haute Savoie, is very well renowned for its wines as well. So get to try a different type of French wine, and this is a great opportunity when you're in a place like Annecy. Now, you haven't spoken about the town of Annecy itself. What's going on in the middle of town? Yeah, good question. Well, the centre of Annecy is broken up into two different kinds of areas, if you like. The first one is the Old Town, which is really spectacular. You have old, colourful houses with cobblestone streets, canals running along the sides of those. It's a pretty small area, but it's very concentrated and it's easy to walk around. It's very flat. Annecy in the city is very flat, so walking is not a problem at all. And it's just really beautiful. It's where all the main tourist restaurants and cafes are. There's a museum there as well called the Palais d'Ille, which used to be an old house, an old palace. but today it's a museum, so you can go and visit that. It's right on the canals. It's a beautiful setting, and whenever you look at photographs from Annecy, you'll see the Palais there sitting in the juncture of two canals. But the old town is really a fantastic place to be on a hot summer's day and evening, with everybody out and about enjoying it. All the outdoor restaurants, al fresco dining, it's really fantastic, and it's again a really great place to be because you're by the water. And the climate is something I haven't spoken about yet, but the climate in Annecy it's like a microclimate. So in the winter, it doesn't get exceptionally cold, but you have a lot of blue sky days with lots of fresh, beautiful, clear days. So unlike a lot of parts in France where it gets grey and drizzly and raining, not so much at the foot of the Alps. You either get really cold and snow or you get nice clear days. Of course, it rains a bit, but not as much as perhaps some of the other areas. So there is a microclimate existing there. Getting back to the township itself, has a railway station, so you can actually come in by train. I did that once. I caught a train from Zurich, actually. I caught a train from Zurich down into Annecy, and that was a great trip because you come along the Lake of Geneva all the way through Lucerne into Geneva and then change trains onto the train that goes to Annecy, and that's a really fascinating trip because it takes you through some of the French countryside that you would otherwise never see because it's nowhere near a road line or anything, and you go along the side of the lake called Aix-les-Bains, which is not far from Annecy. It's another beautiful lake, very similar to Annecy, and it has the train line right next to the lake, so you're literally sitting there looking at this beautiful vista as you're rolling along on the train. And the train stops, when you arrive in Annecy, the train stops almost downtown, so you can get out and get an Uber or a taxi or get picked up by somebody if you're meeting friends and that very easily, and you can walk from the train station to your local hotel if you're staying in the middle of the city. So is the city a very big area? Is it a big city at all? No, actually the township itself is quite small. As I said, the old town, which is at the bottom end of the city and towards the lake, is quite small. And so is the CBD area that you talk about. It's got some, we're not talking a city with skyscrapers and all that. We're talking about a low profile city with regular buildings. Tourism's a very big part of their economic dependency. So there's a lot of hotels, there's a lot of restaurants and cafes and things that are set up for tourists. So yeah, you won't find a big massive business community. There's a couple of famous world brands from Annecy. Salomon, who make the outdoor sports gear and skis, they're actually head offices in Annecy. That's where they come from. But for the most part, you'll find just general local businesses that are supporting the tourist industry and the local industry there. Okay, great. So if someone was going to go to Annecy for the first time, what would you suggest for them to do? Well, that's a really good question, and I guess it depends on what kind of person you are. If you're like me and you like the outdoors and you want to spend a lot of time in the mountains and around the lake, then it's an endless supply of activities and things for you to do. So whether you like jumping off mountains or parachuting over the Alps or climbing and all levels of climbing. So as I said before, if you like hiking or if you like hard rock climbing, if you like summiting tall peaks, Mont Blanc's just down the road, so you can go and climb the highest mountain in Europe if that's the sort of thing that you fancy. But there's so many different opportunities for you to do outdoors things. So bike riding, I suggest getting on the lake, enjoying the water. You can hire boats, you can hire kayaks, and get to really enjoy the water. They have a number of different cruises as well, so you can do a luncheon cruise or a dinner cruise on the lake. Budgets accordingly, so depending on how much money you've got to spend, you can kind of find something that's right for you. But if that's not your thing, then just go and have a barbecue in the local park by the lake. It's just beautiful, and as I say, the council's done a really great job in providing all of the different facilities around the side of the lake for everybody to go and enjoy. So what kind of destination do you think Annecy is for? What type of person would go there? Well, it's really for anyone. I think in terms of it's a great place for families because there's lots of different options for accommodation and camping. You've got all the activities to keep kids busy and excited and entertained while mum and dad can have some time to themselves. It's a great nature place, so being outdoors and being in that kind of lifestyle is much better, I think, than being cramped up in a city somewhere. So yeah, Annecy really caters for every kind of tourist. So if you just want to go there and chill out and do nothing, there's plenty of great places to stay to do that, and great things and places to go, like parks, as I mentioned, to chill out. But if you want to go there and have adrenaline time and get fit and healthy and live that kind of lifestyle, and then fall asleep at night with a belly full of good food and wine, then it's a great place for that. Is it an expensive place to go to? Look, I think like most places, you can find budgets accordingly. There's some really expensive hotels. You've got the Imperial Hotel, which is on the lake, which is a magnificent grand white structure that, again, if you look at photos of Annecy, you'll probably see the Imperial Hotel. That runs around $500 a night for a room, for a basic room. And then you've got a lovely restaurant there, a 5-star restaurant. So you can enjoy that. Or, as I said before, there's so many places to eat around the Old Town that you can find really good food at a price that's affordable for everybody. So, yeah, look, if you're going to live in Annecy, my friends Elaine and Sylvie, they moved from Paris, but they said to me that Annecy was on a par as far as living costs compared to living in Paris. So I actually looked at some of the rankings at some stage when I was there, and Annecy was actually the second most expensive city in France to live after Paris. So, yeah, from a point of view of living, it's not cheap, but from a tourist point of view, if you've got time to do your research, it's like any other place. You can find great deals online, and you can find great food to eat at a reasonable price. So you are in Europe, you are paying euros, so think about that if you're coming from down under. That's all going to add to your cost. So what would you say would be a good period of time to go and have a holiday in Annecy? Well, yeah, that's a really good question, because when I first started going there, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show today, I was going there for just long weekends. And then at some stages, I ended up having a couple of week vacation there. I think my longest period was there over the Christmas period, which was 2 to 3 weeks. And that was fantastic because, like I was at the time, I was in a very high stress job. It was a great time to get away from everything and to chill out and to be in nature. So having that extra time there was really beneficial for me. I really enjoyed that. If I didn't have to drive 9 hours from Brussels from where I was to get there, or 18-hour round trip, then I probably would have gone for a bit longer. But of course, I could have flown there through Geneva, but the hassle of not being able to take my bicycle, I have to put it on the plane and all that sort of stuff. And I just found it so much easier having my own car there and being able to drive around and throw stuff in the back that I wanted to have. So yeah, the cost of taking that long trip was offset by having my own things there that I could go and do. Okay, so if someone's not really into sports and stuff, what other things are there to do around the local area? Yeah, that's a good question. Look, there's plenty of things to do there. The area itself is very historical, so you have a lot of old historic places that you can go and visit in the different villages around the lake. Being only 35 minutes away from Geneva, if you wanted to go and have that big city feel without having to drive too far, you can go across the border into Switzerland and have the Geneva, and of course you've got the lake there at Geneva as well, so that's a beautiful setting. If you wanted to go to Italy, you've got the tunnels into Italy. You can be in the Dolomites in a couple of hours easily. So that's right at your doorstep. And if you wanted to go and play in the high mountains of the French Alps, then up through Albertville and Saint Maurice, then those options are available as well. So I think another thing that Annecy is great for is its location is very central to that southeastern area of France, and therefore it gives you lots of different options to get out. If you're a photography buff, if you're into painting, if you write, it's just such a perfect setting to encapsulate your creative energy and to really produce something amazing, because you're in that spectacular setting. And from a photographic point of view, I'm not a master photographer, but I can tell you that there's just so many amazing lightscapes that happen around the Annecy because of the water, the lake, the mountains. It's just really, really incredible. So if you are into that creative side, then Annecy is a really good place for you as well. Now, you were saying earlier in the show that you've been to a lot of places around France, and Annecy is one of your favourite places. Why is that overall? Oh, look, I think that's a hard one to answer, because it's like asking anybody what's their favourite travel destination, it comes down to the experience that you had while you're there, the people that you met, the relationships that you built. In my case, Annecy, I'm very connected to because I met Elaine and Sylvie right from the get-go. They've given me a connection to Annecy that not everyone would have by going to that area, because I went back so many times and I put energy into building that relationship and friendship. And it's given me a very special connection to that part of the world. And I've watched their two girls grow up and off now into their own lives, doing their own things. So it created amazing memories for me. And it was during a time in my life where I was looking for lots of different things in my life. And I guess by being in nature, and this is what inspires me, by having holidays and trips to where there's such beauty in the nature around, that it gave me an opportunity to really connect with myself more. So it was a place that I used to go and I felt very spiritually at home. If listeners can understand that, I think in terms of, it's one of those places where you just feel ultra comfortable, really chilled out and comfortable. So I think for that reason, Annecy's right up there for me in terms of one of my favorite destinations. It's got everything from the winter to the summer perspective, and I think that's what I love about it so much. So it doesn't really matter what time of the year that you visit, that you can have an all-round fantastic experience. And sure, you have to be into skiing and enjoy that in the wintertime, but a lot of people do, and a lot of people wouldn't necessarily think of this part of the world as somewhere to go for a holiday at that time of the year. So yeah, I think it's all those things combined that make Annecy so special for me. So for people flying in from around the world, what's the best way to get to Annecy? Well, like most places to get to, there's various options. You can, as I said before, you can fly into Geneva. It's an international airport with a lot of direct connections from around the world. You can take the TGV from Paris, and I think in 3 hours you can be in Lyon, and then you can come from Lyon to Annecy by train as well. So and I think the TGV now runs all the way into Annecy. So fast train in Europe is another good option. You can obviously hire a car. So if you do fly into Geneva, then you've got a 35-minute drive across the border into Annecy, which is predominantly highway driving. So it's very easy. And you just literally turn off and you're in Annecy. So yeah, they're the main ways that you would get there, I think, in terms of international travel. It's a very easy destination to get to, and it doesn't take you long to get out of Geneva and into the Annecy area, which is very beautiful. So you can immediately start your holiday and feel as though you're in a really amazing place that you are. Okay, so before I let you go today, what are your top 5 tips for visiting Annecy for our listeners? Whoa, top 5 tips. Okay, let's see if I can nail these. I think that you definitely need to get to the top of one of the mountains around, whether you hike it, cycle it, climb, whatever. I would suggest the La Tournée is the best one to get to because it's the tallest, as I said, around 2,400 meters. You get such a stunning view of the Lake of Annecy and the Mont Blanc range and the Alps itself. So I would really suggest to do that as one. Go and have dinner or drink at the Imperial Palace by the lake because it's such a beautiful setting. And also go to the other end of the lake, down at Dussard, where you have another perspective of the lake, which is really, really beautiful. I would highly recommend that you go parapenting. So that's jumping off the side of a mountain on a tandem jump with a person that's got a parachute. It's one of those parachutes that you can control quite easily, and they put you in a sleeping bag situation. So you're laying down, you're above the lake, you're like a bird just soaring up there. It's a absolutely incredible experience. Spend time in the beautiful gardens and parks around Annecy. They're really spectacular. They're curated beautifully. They've got lots of great facilities for you to go and have picnics and stuff, so definitely do that. Make sure you go to the Old Town and check out the cobbled streets and the cafes and the restaurants, because that's a really fantastic part of Annecy. And go along to the farmers markets because they're really great. You get to see the local produce. You can buy it, you can cook it, you can taste it, and that's a great way of connecting with the locals as well. So yeah, other than that, there's the Chateau Menthon Saint Bernard, which is one of the old chateaus on the side of the lake. It's perched up kind of like an eagle's lair. It's got a fantastic setting that's on the side of the lake. Can't remember now. I think it's on the west side of the lake. But go and check that out because it's really, really spectacular. I think it's privately owned, so you can't actually get in there, but you can get pretty close to it. Has some stunning photography opportunities around that area. So definitely make sure you travel to Annecy with your camera, and make sure you take some nice music as well, because it's a place where you can just get really lost within your soul. Well, there you go, Mark. Thank you very much for joining me on the show today. I hope you've enjoyed your first experience as a guest on a podcast show. How was it? Well, yeah, it was pretty good. It's probably a bit weird for the people listening, but we'll see. This is the first time that we've done this, so happy to come back and be interviewed about another destination sometime. But listen, it's been really good. Thanks for having me on the show today. I've enjoyed talking about one of my favourite places in the world, which is Annecy, and I hope it's inspired someone out there to hop on a plane or a train or get in a car and drive and go to Annecy and just enjoy it, because it's a really fantastic place. And if anybody's got any questions, they can drop me a note and I'll happily answer them for them. Okay, well, that's fantastic. Thanks very much, Mark, again for joining us on the show today. And we'll let you go and we'll catch up with you sometime soon. Okay, thanks, Mark. We'll see you again. Bye-bye. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That's the little bit of a different episode on the Global Travel Channel podcast show today, exploring the beautiful town of Annecy in the southeast of France. If you are keen to go there, then drop me a note and I will put you in touch with some people that can help you out to make sure you have a fantastic holiday experience. Okay, that's it for this episode of the Global Travel Channel podcast show. If you're a first-time listener, thank you very much for joining us. You can find all of our previous episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Stitcher. You can also find them on our website at www.globaltravelchannel.com. To my regular listeners, thank you very much for tuning back in. I hope that you're enjoying our Global Travel Channel podcast series. There's plenty more to come. And don't forget, we've just launched our Patreon page, so if you want to continue to support us in making our podcast, then you can actually help us out on our Patreon page. So check it out on our Facebook site or on our website, and you can see all the details of Patreon. Okay, that's it for this episode. Until we meet again, my name is Mark Philpott, and I want to wish you all a very happy bon voyage.